want to start off by, telling me a little bit about yourself and kind of how you came to the position where you are now at LA Times.
Sure. Well, I am born and bred Oklahoman. I am from Perry, Oklahoma, which is in the north central part of the state. It's a small town. And I started working for a newspaper when I was 15. My first job was at my hometown paper, the Perry Daily Journal. And initially, it was just working in the press room, shoving newspapers together and kind of doing whatever they needed. And that kind of evolved into writing for the paper. And so I worked there all through high school and, fell in love with it. And so, I studied journalism at OU and did a whole bunch of internships. Every summer, I did a couple during the semester, went to New York and Washington, and just any opportunity, kind of took, internships and freelance work and stringer jobs. And shortly after I graduated, I applied for the LA Times Fellowship for Young Reporters. And so that's how I got hired on. So I've been at the LA Times since 2011, so 11 years now, which is crazy.
Yeah. What kind of growth have you seen within yourself when it comes to your work as a journalist?
I'm more confident now. I mean, when you're young and you are starting, your early jobs, it's really intimidating. And I remember getting back some of my first edits, just being like, I don't deserve to be here. This is, I'm out of my league. And you just keep doing it and keep doing it. And, eventually, you kind of realize, I know what I'm doing. And so your confidence grows, with time and just tons and tons of practice. And I'm a more confident writer. And so, I'm comfortable being, a little funny with the writing or, kind of putting some more personality into it because I know that my stories are, well received and that just comes from time and experience. So for me, I try to write actually with a sense of humor, even sad stories, I kind of look for, unique details that people are going to remember, kind of paying attention to people, what they say, of course, but also, other things like, their behavior when they're talking to you or the scenery around them. So I feel like I've become a much more detailed writer. I've kind of found my voice and, as cliche as that is, it's something that takes time. There's a lot of growth in different ways.
Would you say your fear of being edited has gone down as you've, matured in your career?
I mean, we all need an editor. We all have an ego. So if there's something, if there's a story I love, and if you get back and edit that's just like, this doesn't work, or this is too long, we need to cut this. I mean, that's always gonna, be painful, but I really respect the process now. And I actually, it's like I look back on old stories and I know my editors have helped me, make stories better. Until recently, I had the same editor for, over 7 years, and you build that trust with someone because it's kind of a unique relationship, when you've got an editor whose job is to, kind of work with something that's your creative work. And, I got to where I really appreciate the work that editing takes. I mean, I actually edit some myself now.
Okay. And I want to talk a little bit and dive into your story that you wrote. It really stood out to me just because, everybody looks at COVID and they think negative impact and everybody's lives changed for the worse. But your story highlighted how COVID benefited this small school. Can you just tell me a little bit more about the story?
That story was so much fun. And you're right. I mean, we've had, 2.5 years now of just constant, sad news, when it comes to this pandemic. And it's funny because the stories that I write for the paper that, are more hopeful, I end up hearing from a lot more readers. This is kind of the way my reporting goes. I usually kind of pick an area, and in this case, it was a place up in Northern California. It's Humboldt County. It's beautiful redwoods, packed county next to the ocean. I usually go up and I pick 2 or 3 stories and kind of spend a couple of days there because I do a lot of state reporting. I was kind of looking at the map of where I was going to be, and I saw that there was this little town kind of out in the middle of nowhere called Kneeland, and I thought, oh, that's an interesting town name. It sounds silly, but yeah. I thought, just was intrigued by the name. And I saw that it's just up on this mountain, and, literally just looking at the maps, I saw that there was a school there. And I thought, oh my gosh, what is it like to go to school, in this kind of remote part of California? And so I got lucky. I actually just, essentially cold called. I sent an email to the superintendent there, just kind of out of the blue, and I introduced myself. I said, this is a long shot, but I see you guys have this little school out in the middle of nowhere. What's it like? And I got lucky because the superintendent was just, an absolute, gem of a person. And she gets really excited and starts telling me about the school. And, within just this, very broad questioning, she said, we've grown, a whole lot during the last 2 years. And I thought, oh, that's my story. Because in California right now, schools are shrinking. Public schools have seen dramatic declines in enrollment. And, here's one of the state's smallest schools, and they were actually saved. She let myself and a photographer just come hang out all day, which was, just lovely and just kind of a ray of sunshine. And, we got to know the school and, the challenges and the joys that come with running this, very small but very important, school. And, it was such a treat.
And how long did it take you to report this story? Report and write from starting first phone call to submitting the final to your editor?
It was a day of reporting on the ground. It was like a 10 or 11 hour day, like at the school. The story, I had to kind of turn around pretty quickly. I wrote the story over the course of probably a day and a half. And then, the edit didn't take too long.
And were there any surprises while you were doing your reporting? Was there anything you were really like, wow, that's crazy, like surprised about?
Honestly, just how much the teachers cared. It's a small school, but it's, the kids aren't held to any lower standard. I was surprised by just the quality of the teaching and the people there, including the superintendent's son, who was, just this very smart young man, who's 20 years old and working with the kids. And you can just tell talking to him. He loves it. It's one of those places that kind of restores your faith in humanity.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And what was your favorite experience while writing this story?
While writing the story?
Yeah.
Hanging out with the kids. And, at one point during the day, they're up on this mountaintop. They have this, the kids literally play in the woods. And so we got to watch the kids, on recess, playing baseball with, like redwoods behind them. And it was just such a simple and joyful thing to see. And that's something that will stick with me.
What did writing this story mean to you?
One of the great things about reporting in more rural areas is the people you meet stick with you for a long time. Because it's not they don't ever get reporters coming up there. And so, it really means something to the people who are there. And, sharing their story, I don't take that lightly because, nobody else is telling their story.
And what do you feel is the most important factor when it comes to reporting stories like this about small towns and things like that?
Whatever you print is going to a very large audience, depending on the outlet that you're in. And so, I really weigh, how they're going to be perceived, for better or worse. And I always go in with it with an open mind. No matter what the story, no matter what preconceived notions I have about a place or people.
And what advice would you give to student journalists and reporters who are nearing graduation and are beginning to enter the job field? Like, what advice would you give them?
Apply for internships. Apply, get as much, experience as you can. Get as many clips as you can. If there's not internships, offer to freelance, offer to do stringer work. Humility goes a long way. My first job was at a newspaper that printed 2,000 copies a day. Mm-hmm. And I learned so much there, that really drove my career. So don't come out of school thinking you're going to start at the top, and that's okay. Be willing to work for, a smaller outlet or to do jobs where you can work your way up. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Just kind of building a consistent body of work that shows that you're dedicated and that you enjoy the work really, really goes a long way.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's all I have for you. Is there any questions that you have for me or anything else you'd like to say?
No, I appreciate it.
Thank you again, Hailey, for talking to me.
All right, thanks so much.